Money stress keeps 77% of Americans up at night, according to new research. But today we're exploring why the tiniest financial habits might be more powerful than winning the lottery.
Well, that's a pretty bold claim. Are we really saying small moves beat sudden wealth?
You know what's fascinating? Studies show lottery winners often end up worse off financially within 5 years. It's because they never developed those fundamental money habits we're diving into today.
So, you're telling me that developing tiny money routines could actually be more valuable than $1 million windfall?
Exactly right, and here's why. A recent study from MIT showed that people who implemented just three basic money habits increased their savings by 210% over 18 months without changing their income at all.
Hmm, that's pretty incredible. What were those three habits?
Well, before we get to those specific habits, let me share something that blew my mind. Researchers found that the average person makes 35,000 decisions every day, and about 70 of those are directly related to money.
Oh, wow, no wonder people feel so overwhelmed about their finances.
Right. And here's what makes it worse. Studies show that financial education in schools has actually decreased over the past decade. Only 21% of students now get any form of money management training.
Well, that explains why so many people feel lost when it comes to handling their money. What's the first small move people can make to start turning things around?
Let's talk about what researchers call the pause principle, taking just 10 seconds before any purchase. The data on this is fascinating. A study of 2,000 consumers showed this tiny pause reduced impulse buying by 64%.
That seems almost too simple to be true. How does it actually work in practice?
So here's a real world example. I started using this 10-second rule last month, and you know those targeted Instagram ads that usually get me? I've saved over $200 just by implementing this tiny pause.
That's pretty remarkable for such a small change. What happens in those 10 seconds that makes such a big difference?
Well, neuroscience shows us that this brief pause actually shifts brain activity from the emotional center to the rational decision making area. It's like giving your prefrontal cortex a chance to step in and be the responsible adult.
Speaking of being responsible, let's talk about this concept of naming your money. How does that work exactly?
Oh my goodness, this is where behavioral economics gets really interesting. Research shows that people who assign specific purposes to their money typically spend 24% less than those who keep everything in one mental bucket.
That's fascinating. Do you have any specific examples of how this works in real life?
Well, imagine you have $1,000 in your account. Instead of seeing it as just $1,000, you mentally label it. $500 is your rent crew, $200 is your grocery gang, $100 is your emergency squad, and so on. Studies show this simple mental shift makes people 3 times less likely to dip into funds for unintended purposes.
You know what's interesting about that? It reminds me of how Japanese families traditionally used to keep money in separate envelopes for different purposes. And
That's exactly right. And speaking of traditional methods, let's talk about the power of tiny automatic savings. Did you know that people who automate even $1 per day are 287% more likely to maintain a long term savings habit?
well, that certainly challenges the notion that you need to save huge amounts to make a difference.
And here's what's really mind blowing. Compound interest calculations show that saving just $5 a day, starting at age 25, could grow to over $300,000 by retirement age, assuming average market returns.
Those numbers are pretty compelling. But how do people stay consistent with these habits?
That's where the one place only rule comes in. Research shows that people who consolidate their spending to one primary payment method typically spend 23% less per month simply because they're more aware of their total spending.
So it's really about making things simpler and more visible.
Exactly. And this ties into our final small move, the end of day money question. A study from Stanford showed that people who spent just 30 seconds reviewing their daily spending were able to reduce unnecessary expenses by an average of $438 per month.
Now, that's the kind of return on investment anyone would want for 30 seconds of their time.
And here's what makes all these small moves so powerful. They work with your brain's natural tendency to form habits. Neuroscience shows that tiny, consistent actions actually create stronger neural pathways than big occasional changes.
That really challenges the go big or go home mentality that's so common in financial advice.
You know what's interesting? A recent psychology study found that people who focus on small, manageable financial habits report 42% less money related stress than those who try to make dramatic changes.
Well, that certainly makes these small moves seem a lot more appealing than trying to completely overhaul your financial life overnight.
And here's the really exciting part: these habits compound over time. Research shows that people who maintain these small money moves for at least 6 months typically see their net worth increase by an average of 31% within 2 years.
Those are some pretty impressive results for such simple changes. Any final thoughts on where people should start?
Well, behavioral science suggests starting with just one habit. The 10-second pause rule has the highest success rate at 89%. Once that becomes automatic, you can layer in the other moves one at a time.
That sounds like a much more manageable approach than trying to change everything at once.
Absolutely right. And remember, it's not about being perfect. Research shows that people who maintain these habits 80% of the time get virtually the same results as those who stick to them 100% of the time.
Now, that's what I call a realistic approach to financial wellness.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's exploration of these powerful money moves. Remember, small steps, consistently taken, can lead to extraordinary changes in your financial life.